Hi everyone, I appreciate you taking some time to watch today's video. In today's video, I want to kind of go over the baits and tactics that I kind of use when I'm targeting post-spawn bass with the big swim baits. So it really depends as to kind of how you want to go about your fishing and what your fishing style kind of gravitates toward. I'm going to cover both, but so after the bass spawn, the bass typically will split leading into the summer months, and what they end up doing is, half are going to kind of stay up shallow, another half's going to go deep. Okay, so we're going to kind of branch into both segments because the baits are a little bit different, and a better way to put it, it might not be that the baits are so much different, it's just the variations of how you need to kind of manipulate your baits vary based upon the situation that you're wanting to target them. So kind of going into the post spawn, let's hit the deep fish first, because that is actually that is not really where I spend most of my time. So I'll kind of give you some of my bait choices when I do decide to go that route. But like I said, typically I like to stay up shallow. I like to beat the bank. I like to, do target cover, all that kind of stuff. But let's hop into it really quickly on the deep fish. So after they've kind of spawned, and this is directly after the post spawn, or directly after they spawn, so you're gonna, you'd be thinking like they are gonna pull out to, they're up super shallow, they're gonna pull out deeper, pretty close to initially after they spawn and get finished spawning. The females will stay up there a little bit, but predominantly that's like your buck bass and your males that are guarding the nest. So your females are going to pull out and they're going to get a little bit deeper. Now, deeper is relative based upon your body of water, so take this and apply it to your fishery. But when you kind of come out, you got to think you're kind of in these spawning coves, these spawning pockets. So where are they going to kind of navigate themselves to? Okay, typically they're going to pull out to like the first, let's just say, drop off, or the first like secondary point coming out of that spawning cove. They need to be able to bulk up and try to gain some of that energy that they lost during the spawn. So, be thinking about it like that. They're wanting to gorge, so to speak. This is why this is probably my favorite time of year to be swim bait fishing. You are not required to fish a swim bait slow. You can actually, reel. You can really use the baits to really be able to cover water if that's what you decide to do. Now, your offshore deep fishing, it's a little bit different. So when you're targeting those big deep points, something like the All-American trash fish, this trash fish has, as you can kind of see, a big lead weight in the front of it. That's by a local company here in my area. It's called Ledge Head Lures. They really make a really nice head. I really like for big swim baits, especially something like this, and they can vary hook size and everything like that. So really like that company. They do a really good job with lead heads, and that's on the All-American trash fish. This is the 6-inch fat, and it's a really good little bait. It's really designed to just kind of go down to the bottom and crawl it. It's a really nice little bait, super lifelike, got all the little fins, all the little tails, super soft plastic. This is the 8-inch, and I have the 8-inch rigged on the Blade Runner insert hook. I think I've got like the big 1 ounce or 1.5, whatever their heaviest size is, to be able to get the bait down. But I wanted that because it conceals that lead, and it really makes it look like, it's just a hook inside. And then you've got your line tie right up here, right basically in between the eyes. So this is the 8-inch. It's a really nice little bait. Once again, it's just about how you want to kind of target those fish. A couple other real quick options is you've got, this is like the Storm Wild Eye Shad. This is, one of the more economical versions of like a swim bait to put down there deep. You get 3 in a pack. This is the 6-inch and like white shad or something like that. It's a real pretty little bait, but that's just an option. And then you can always, you know, change it up. You know, we've got like the, you know, the dangerous swimmer, put a big 1 ounce lead head on it and kind of roll it through the schools. You've got all kinds of different options with your soft baits. Soft baits, in my opinion, come back into full swing in the post spawn if you're wanting to fish deep, because they just excel to where you can fish and cover water, but very target specific. You know, if you mark a bunch of fish off of a secondary point, you know, you can line up your cast, let that swim bait go down, hit bottom, and then just kind of wind it through them, and those bass will eat it. So those are great options. You know, if you're on the bank and you can find one of those secondary points, definitely try that. I mean, you know, you do run the risk, I mean, of getting snagged a little bit more if you're using an exposed jig hook versus the guy in the boat. But you do have other options. You know, you can always rig it like on a big heavy belly weight to try to rig it weedless, or a big flashy swimmer that owner makes. So either one of those options would work really, really well to be able to target the deep fish. Now, on those deep fish, and this is where it comes into relative as to how deep your fish go, you know, this time of year there's really no thermocline established. So those fish are going to really heavily relate to their bait and how much food they can get in a certain area. So if you've got schools of shad, threadfin, you know, trout, any kind of bait fish, shiners, if they're relating deeper, the bass can target them deeper. So just be aware and cognizant of that. If you go deep, you know, depending upon your body of water, that's why I say that typically I would stay on a soft body bait for deeper fish, just because it's going to be easier to keep the bait in the strike zone longer. You know, the big glides and things like that, they're great at pulling fish up, but it just depends on how deep they are for me personally to have a great deal of confidence. If I'm fishing secondary points and I'm only fishing, you know, 10 foot of water, I'll absolutely throw a glide over top of them, especially if they're kind of targeting up or higher in the water column, suspending like in that 10-foot zone. Don't have a bit of problem. I would be perfectly comfortable throwing glides over that. But at the same time, I have a lot of really, really deep structure where I live on these highland reservoirs, and targeting those deep fish could mean that I'm going out 50 foot trying to target fish that are sitting in 40. I'm gonna have to sink that glide bait way down, and then as I start reeling, that glide bait is naturally gonna start coming up. So trying to be cognizant of that and trying to match my bait to be able to best present it for those fish is paramount. So that is my big key thing when I'm thinking about this. It just depends on how deep is for your body of water. And you know, as we get closer to summer, those fish are gonna basically point hop, and they're gonna run channel swing banks, so those big tall cliff banks. They're gonna run those like little highways, and they're gonna run those right back out to the main body of water for some of your deep fish. You'll always have deep fish, you know, relative as long as there's bait in the area. But you know, as you keep watching the schools move, they're gonna keep clustering together. The deeper they go, the farther out, more close to the main body of water. It just allows for deeper water. It allows them to feel safer, the whole 9 yards. So that is kind of the deep fish, and that's kind of how I would approach it. Is immediately after they spawn, I'd start targeting, basically in my area, anywhere from 10 to probably 20 foot of water. And if you think about it, 20 foot's not that deep. That's the average length of a bass boat. So if you kind of think about it that way, 20 foot's not really all that deep. But that's kind of how I would be approaching it to start with. Okay, and then as you go throughout the post spawn, approaching summer, naturally, you know, move your depth accordingly. So those are your deep fish. Those are the fish that I would say, you know, most of us would probably use that kind of fishing later in the day, because most, including myself, love to throw topwater. Okay, well typically there's a really good morning topwater bite because the shad spawn is going on right directly after the bass spawn. And I just did a video on the shad spawn, which I'll leave a link to in here. But so the shad are spawning, those bass are really hungry because they've just finished spawning, so it becomes a full-blown feast of little shad that are getting ready to get eaten by some big bass. So kind of from that approach, looking at the swim bait, it's the most natural bait in my mind that you can present. It looks just like a fish. I mean, some of these, the designs on them are phenomenal. There's great bait designers out there. So when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking shad spawn, I need to move fast, and I need to be able to cover water, and I need to be able to keep it tight to cover. So one of the biggest two baits that I'm going to use predominantly two. I'm either going to throw a multi-joint, and I know this is a bright white. This bait just came out of the mold. It got put together, and I haven't been able to throw some paint on it yet. This is my bait, but it's just a multi-joint. It's a very serpentine action. It's going to really move very tight as it kind of goes through the water column. And it's designed to be able to go fast. This is the time of year, and you will not outrun a bass. You can't outrun it. You can definitely jerk it out of its mouth, but you can't outrun it. Jerked it out of two largemouth's mouth this past weekend, just getting too excited too quick because you're watching these bites with your own eyes. You're not having to use a live scope. I had the live scope powered on, but I had the transducer disabled. So here's what you do is you parallel those banks, keep it tight, and you find those shad spawns. And if you've got a shad spawn, you go that bank and you run it. And keep your trolling motor going and you burn. The slowest reel that I will run a multi-joint on, if I'm intending on burning it, is a 7-to-1. I like the 8-to-1, like that Tatula 300 for this, but it just depends on if I've actually got that rod available at the time. So a 7-to-1 is the slowest I want to go, and it really is. You burn the reel and do a real quick pause, and then you burn it again. That bait will be running super fast, then it'll kick out, and then you'll burn it again. What that is showing those bass is this little shad fleeing. And as you can also tell, looking at it from, if you're in the water, you're looking up on the bait, you see how narrow the profile, for one, and then you also can see as to each individual joint could potentially be a shad in that bass's mind because it's moving. It is not just kind of slow rolling like you do a glide. So that is a great option, and that is something that I typically start my day with, is a big multi-joint. Because honestly, I love throwing glide baits, and glide baits are a ton of fun to catch fish on. But when you have a bass come unglued to hit a multi-joint, it feels like they're about ready to break your arm. They hit that bait so ferocious. They are intending to kill it, and they want to eat it, and they want it gone. So it is such a fast and aggressive bite. It's one of the most addicting parts of swim bait fishing, in my opinion. Throwing a multi-joint and burning it. I've had several days to where, and you can catch so many fish so fast with it. When you get on a particular bank holding fish and you start burning that bait, I caught 3 fish within 20 minutes on that, because you're also during the right time. That bait is a high in the water column bait, at least the one that I've got built here. You can do faster sinks to be able to maybe run them a little bit deeper, but predominantly they're more so designed for shallow water. You can run them over points, and I know with herring lakes it's different because you'll be running them over deep water, but typically the herring are higher in the water column from what I understand. I don't have herring lakes in my area, but that's my understanding as to kind of how the herring run, is they're more open water bait fish. So along with that, you also have another option, which is the wake bait. and this is a three-piece, two-joint wake. It's just designed to go really slow. I do have a bill in this one, so hopefully I can, my thought with the bill is I want to be able to crank it just a little bit faster, and that bill keeps it cranking. I don't have to like weigh it to where it will slow sink. I can actually just crank it. That's my thought. This one's a little bit of a darker purple gizzard in the color, as you can kind of tell. It's got the red highlights there. Hopefully that's going to be a kill shot. That's what I'm hoping for. It's a fresh bait. The baits work. It's just a fresh bait. I wanted to paint one up and get one going, but really an idea would be the wake bait. So if you got a buddy with you and y'all are both parallel and bank, you'd have one throwing the wake and then the other's throwing that multi-joint, and you are able to cover so much water. And the beauty of this is you're throwing a big bait. You're not throwing, a popper. You're not throwing some like small spook. You are pulling fish to you so far away. I mean, throw it over brush piles, throw it all around hard cover on those bluff banks, throw it all over every bit of that, because they will come unglued for this. And especially if they're on that shad spawn, it becomes phenomenal to be able to throw these baits. So that's kind of as we're moving up shallow, and that's during the post spawn. But let's get off the shad spawn now and just talk about what are we going to do for the rest of the day up shallow. So on your up shallow deal, you've got the major things that are going on in the lake. Okay, the shad spawns typically in the morning, and the bait fish stay relatively, shallow, but they can pull off a little bit. But you've also got other things going on up shallow. So you've got the terrestrial animals, the mice, and the rats, the chipmunks. All that is getting active this time of year because they're going to be swimming and things like that. So you've got the terrestrial kind of deal. You've also got the bluegill spawn that's going to be going on. All right, so with the bluegill spawn, the big thing that you're going to be looking for is, for me, bass like to eat big meals, and they like to eat them because it gives them a ton of energy for the amount of effort they have to do to be able to kill that piece of prey. So that is why a bluegill works phenomenally, or a bluegill type kind of bait. So that is definitely going to be some of the key bass that I'm targeting this time of year. Is I'm up shallow and I'm targeting these bluegill feeders. Now for me, a bluegill feeder is typically meaning that I'm going to probably throw more of like a bluegill colored bait. I don't really try to change the style as far as the body style of my baits. That's me personally, and I also enjoy throwing my own baits. So I'll do something a little bit more in like a bluegill kind of color. That's my green gill color. I'll also throw more of like a shad profile that's just big. It's really hard to tell in this kind of lighting, but this is more of like a green gizzard. It's got a little bit of a green highlight up here, as well as a little bit of purple. So that's kind of what I'm looking for is, and here's the places that I'm going to target, because this is also very key this time of year. I'm looking for trees, and I'm looking for kind of your semi-flat banks. I don't want to call it flat, but you're kind of looking for these like 45s. Bluegill spawn super shallow, same as a largemouth. So don't count out less than 5 foot of water, not this time of year. When those bluegills start spawning, you'll see these wolf packs of bass just kind of cruising, okay? It's very difficult to catch those fish sometimes. I know conventionally speaking, we throw the floating worm and like poppers and things like that to try to get those bass, but you can also throw the big swim bait. But put that bait on the bank. I mean, you want it inches from hitting the rocks basically, or going and landing on the bank. Put it as close as you can and then work that bait. Now, speed with a glide bait. This will vary from fish to fish because you'll have to play it out. This past weekend, I'm currently facing all 3 stages of the spawn. We do have a few pre-spawners left. We do still have some spawning going on, but a lot of our fish are starting to get into this pre-spawn mode. And like I said, this is my favorite time of year because you don't have to go super slow. And if you want to target a more aggressive fish, you absolutely can do it by the way you present your bait. So for myself, what I like to do, it just varies on the species also of the bass. For me, a spotted bass and a smallmouth being super, super aggressive, you can go faster. You know, that glide bait with its cutting action, you know, I mean, work it hard, really chop that bait, those quarter turns with your reel, dance it, and I mean fast. It's, you don't have to slow down. This weekend, you know, I finally broke the smallmouth curse of my baits for whatever reason, but I never actually caught a smallmouth on my glide baits. Don't have any clue why. I've had plenty of interaction with one, but I just could not seem to get a smallmouth to actually latch a hold of it. Well, that changed this weekend with these baits. It's the Jethro 7.5, but once again, I was not working that bait slow. It was constant chops. Okay, largemouth, for me, and what I've experienced, is they like it slower. They like it easier. They like to just kind of cruise up on it, and then they'll open their mouth, they'll grab it, and then they'll just kind of cruise off. That's the deal with the largemouth, for at least whatever reason that I've experienced. That is not to say a largemouth will not chase a bait and hit it as it's moving fast. They absolutely will. But I have caught my bigger largemouth doing this more slow cuts, doing some pauses in between, and then doing some more slow cuts and really pulling those fish to it. So it just varies based on the fish. Spotted bass, I don't think they really care. They just want to eat it. They're just aggressive and mad at the world. So that is kind of my approach for the biggest end of the post spawn. Now, that was the hard baits. The only exception to the hard baits is you do still have your rat. The rat bite is going to get more and more dominant for me as I go through into the summer. This is my rat. He's pretty well, he's, you know, a real dark rat, but kind of wanted him that way just because black's just an all-around good color. He's got a white belly, which is kind of similar to a shad, you know, if they're on more shad, but as he kind of walks and kind of does his little walk, he's going to flash some black. So vary things up. Nothing is off the table in the post spawn. This is one of the best times of year to be out on the water throwing the big bait. All right, now lastly, I want to touch on these because there's a lot of people out there that prefer to throw soft baits. As you can kind of tell, I am more of a hard bait fisherman. However, I do still carry soft baits. I don't go to the lake without a soft bait. That would be unwise on my part. Now, some of my favorite soft baits, I know it's missing eyes, but this is the Working Class Zero Citizen. This is the Citizen 7. I have the Citizen 6. Really like the Citizen 6. For a lot of my fish, I tend to get more bites on the 6. And a lot of that's just because, you know, smaller bait, you're going to get more bites typically. But on the 7, and I'm using this just because it's bigger and easier to see, you know, you're going to throw this the same place you're going to throw that glide bait, the same place you're going to be throwing the multi-joints. The difference here is you're going to have to reel a little bit slower just because of, you know, it's a soft bait. You can't burn a soft bait as easily. So, but the Working Class Zero Citizen's a phenomenal bait. Really love how much action you get out of that tail. I know they are kind of tricky, I'll put it that way, to actually find and get a hold of because they typically do them through drops, but you can definitely get these. These are pretty available. Mike Gilbert puts these out, and I mean, he's pretty regular. I mean, couple drops every couple of weeks or something like that. So they're not too hard to find, but if you enjoy throwing a big soft bait, the Working Class Zero Citizen with the belly weight, I mean, it's designed for a belly weight. As you can see, look how stealthy. You can barely even see the hook in the bait. to me, that alone makes a huge selling point for this bait. And I'm not trying to sell working class zero bait, but it is concealed. I really like that. Another option that's a lot more readily available, the 13 fishing baits. I think this is like the Coalition Shad or something like that. I'm not sure its official name. It's got a very similar kind of cavity in here to where it'll collapse pretty easily and that hook will come out. And it's a big hook that it takes. As you can kind of tell, it's also very concealed. You can't really see it. This one's in thread fin, but you can get different colors. And then again, you know, don't discount like your Zal Dangerous or your Mag Draft on a belly weight, because you're going to be throwing it so shallow. You're going to be throwing it into the trees, into the grass. You want it to be able to come back and you not lose all of your action. You don't want to get hung and stay hung, because if you are throwing for those shallow fish, if you get your boat too close to them, you'll spook them, and then you've got to kind of just go on to the next tree or go on to the next rock pile. It's so easy to spook those fish if you try to get up there and you start banging around the trees and banging around the covers. You want to get your bait in there and pull the fish out. So that is predominantly how I approach the post spawn leading into the summer. And like I said, it really depends on how you like to fish. If you're a deep guy, you know, this second half of information, you probably, you know, you might tackle the first early morning, the first 2 hours or whatever that you're on the water, and then you go target your deep fish. You may target deep fish all day. Love to hear everybody's comments. Are you a deep water guy, or are you a shallow in the post spawn going into summer? But it's a wonderful time of year to be throwing the big swim bait. These bass will absolutely attack it. You know, and the beauty of this is you're targeting the bigger size fish. Don't get me wrong, you will catch plenty of the 2 and 3 pounders, but you're also putting yourself in the best odds of catching the 5+. My area, anything over 5 is considered typically a pretty good size fish. We have really nice fish in our area, and I'm really hoping to be able to get on another good swing of bank and a good swing of fishing where I'm really catching a lot of those well over 5. So take all this into consideration. Please leave me any comments down below. I'd love to hear you all approach the post spawn, what kind of baits you throw. You know, do you throw the belly weights more? Do you throw a glide, a multi-joint? What is your approach? But I appreciate you watching this video. I know it's a little bit of a lengthy one, but I like to get out these swim bait seasons and kind of my approaches for them as to like the different baits and the styles of baits that I'm using. But please hit that little thumbs up button that helps the algorithm kind of catch the video and helps us get it out to others. Share this with all your fishing buddies. I really appreciate it. It gives everybody something to think on if they want to throw a big bait this time of year, especially if you're in a tournament situation looking for that kicker fish. A swim bait is a phenomenal way to get the kicker. And then lastly, please hit that little subscribe button. That lets you know every single video that comes out. I try to do a video once a week. Right now I'm trying to release them all on Monday night, but please hit that little subscribe button, completely free, and hitting that little notification bell lets you know when any new video comes out. But I really appreciate you taking some time to watch today's video, and I'll see you in the next video.